Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for taking the time to dial in for day 2 of the Southeast Economic Summit event and activity. It was quite illuminating and very, very impactful discussions yesterday when we dealt with a number of issues. Apart from the welcome address, I made a presentation setting the scenes for the summit, which also went ahead to explain what we had done in Cs 1, Cs 2, Cs 3, Cs 4, and Cs 5, and what we were hoping to achieve in Cs 6. And although it may often seem like a talking shop, there's actually quite a number of successes that have come out of the seeds that we have been planting over the years. And I was particularly struck yesterday by the comment of Professor Simon Otwanya, who is the Director General of the Southeast Governors Forum and who are still cooperating and working with us in partnership. And he was quoting Lobsam Rampart. And it's a long time since I heard anybody quote from him. But he said, it is better to light a candle than to curse the darkness. And so sometimes while it feels like it's dark and everywhere, and we're not really achieving everything, the point is that we need to continue to light these candles, and slowly we will illuminate the entire area and start to get the sort of successes that we expect to get. Mazi Sam Ohabunwa gave his usual full and frank exposition of issues that we have and things that are not going wrong. And he emphasized that we have a scorecard of the successes of Cs, which is in development and should be out early in the new year. They need to ensure that we have a secure environment, and somehow we need to get our law enforcement and others to actually enforce law and order. There's a need to reduce the bureaucracy and interference. In fact, it's often said, and he said so as well, that we could do a lot more without government than with government. If government would just do their own part and stay out of the way, but actually they tend to get in the way when we start to want to get things done. And of course, the private investment is the way to move forward. And we need to consider entrepreneurial training from the primary and secondary schools, as well as teaching people from a very young age how to access money, because there is no gainsaying the fact that employment is never really going to take you anywhere. We need to start developing that entrepreneurial spirit. And this had been identified in earlier Cs where we had done some work on the Igbo apprenticeship model. And I'm very pleased that in our second session today, Pascal, Dr. Pascal Umekwe, who has been working with Professor Ndubuisi Ekekwe, will, on the Harvard Business Review, have now taken forward the Igbo entrepreneurial system. And we look forward to listening to that session in the second part of this morning, because this is part of where we're going to go to. He also spoke about joint funding agencies, and SEREDEC is pulling together one such group, and the fact that we need to do industrialization. And the one key thing, even if you employ one person, by the time we start to take things back, we'll find out that lots of people will slowly come off the streets. On a low level, personally, I already have a workforce of around 40 people. And so every little thing we do will help us to make our move. We will remain politically neutral, but we need to be politically aware. And the so many other sessions came out. We then had a women's session, and we had an awesome paper by Josephine Anene, who really set the scene, and that paper will be shared to all registered participants. And we had a number of discussions around the fact that we all need to work on the cultural areas that will allow our women get the freedom. It's remarkable that before colonialism, women had a bigger role to play than we have now, that in many town unions, women are totally excluded. Therefore, we can never really get women leaders coming out into our local communities. So it's all about a mindset, and we need to start driving that change, both the men and the women. It's men and women cooperating to make development in the Southeast a lot better. So that's a brief recap of what happened yesterday. Today, we're going to discuss contributions from the diaspora, especially outside Igboland. In fact, we're going to concentrate on contributions from Igbos who are not necessarily living within Igbo territory. And then we will have a youth-led session. And the whole idea is, after some inspirational talks, that we have full engagement by the youth and by other people to give us an idea. The whole idea is that we're providing a platform this year to listen to ideas and suggestions that may not normally see the light of day, so that we can pull them together into the articulated overall action plan that we have, which is quite detailed. And finally, we'll end up on a security session, the key lessons and the way forward. So with those few words, I will, before we go to the first session, I will hand the microphone to Professor Bart Nnaji, Chairman of SEREDEC, to say a few words for the morning. Prof.
Dr. Abani, good morning. Dr. Abani, good morning.
Good morning.
Professor Nnaji is here, but he's on the phone. If we can give him a minute so that we're done with his phone call, then he will give us a welcome address. Okay. Good, and thank each and every one of us for making a time to join this second day segment of C6. As Dr. Abani just said, on his recap, this is something that we have been doing, and the seed has been planted and is yielding fruits already. So here is Professor Bart Nnaji for him to give us a welcome address. Thank you.
Oh, okay. I'd like to appreciate all of us this morning for day 2. Yesterday was quite insightful. A lot of excellent ideas came, and I think that today will also be same or even better. So you're most welcome, everyone. And thanks for finding the time to participate in this summit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Okay. Without wasting any further time, can you please keep mute people? Yeah, you need to be on the ball, Israel. Thank you. Okay, so the first session for this morning, and we're far gone, so we'll need to keep to our time, is contribution from the diaspora outside Nigeria, and mainly outside Igboland. And it's all around the principle of Ruo Ulo. But what does that mean to the different groups, and how do we actually make it happen? It's a phrase that we often use and people say, but for this, but for that. So we want to listen to two presenters who are going to give us an idea of what Ruo Ulo means, what has actually happened, what suggestions that they think we should take on board, and how we can make matters progress. So the first speaker is Chief Ikem Ume-Ezeoke. He's the president of Umunna Lekki Association. You're welcome, sir. Israel, can you either give me control or can you, yes, mute him. You're welcome, sir.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, sir.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. I'll come back to you in a second, sir. Thank you. And the second speaker for this morning is Professor Bart Nnaji. With this time, he's speaking as the founder and CEO of the Aba Integrated Power Project, which is the only generation and distribution power project in the country. And I think from what we're going to listen to from both of these presenters, we will have a lot to digest, a lot to take on board, and lots of comments that we may want to make. So if I may start, please, with Chief Ikem, if you could please go ahead and give us some of your words of wisdom. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, SEREDEC, especially Prof. Prof, we'll meet again. Good morning, sir. Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes,
thank you very much, Ikem. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Getting us involved.
Yes, thank you.
This is our first time in joining this seminar, and we're grateful for this opportunity to air our views and voice our concerns over the Ruo Ulo mantra. The topic is very symbolic within the Umunna Imobi. It has really taught our minds at various occasions and put us against many in search of concrete solutions. Our Ruo Ulo initiative has been discussed in various Igbo associations and still discussed today. So we are passionate about it. The well-renowned intellectual and strength in Igbo cannot be seen within our arena, within the Igbo region. And this is a concern. The paucity of infrastructure in the Southeast region, in the midst of the strength and capacity of our people, still nothing is happening in an Igbo. Even the insignificant size of our land mass in consideration of other regions has not really helped for us to close up the gap. What is really the problem? What is the struggle? Why Ojenya is able to develop our Igbo? Where you can see that even 70% of the land space and ownership in Abuja is owned by Igbo. We have over 45 trillion businesses in the north. 85% of the recent Lekki assets is being developed by Igbo. What is really the problem? You know, it has really been a concern among the Umunna Dike Association. So it's one of the things that brought us together. So I will first of all talk about our association, who we are. Umunna Lekki is a social-cultural association of Igbo within the Lekki Victoria Island Axis, whose common agenda, amongst all, is to push for the interests of Igbo within this area and far beyond. We are made up of young enterprising, young Igbo people within the age bracket of 35 and 60. And these men are established and have a growing concern that are very significant in and outside these zones. We are very experienced, educated, and exposed, but are very concerned about the poor development of our people, of our region. Our main objectives are to build a strong bond of union among Igbo living in these areas, facilitate each other, and be our brother's keeper, building a new crop of Igbo leaders with proper values, humility, sound mind with the aim of unifying Igbo, working with Igbo interest groups to push for common national interests, encouraging and building cohesive union amongst Igbos and other ethnic groups for common national interests,
working in partnership with government, interest group in developing our region for stronger economic benefits. So you can see in this, Akuruno is a dominant topic within our circle. So why is this still not reflected in our region, taking all this potential of our people? We'll consider one of the major factors, which is present leadership deficiency, because this has always been a bottleneck. And we can never rule out this in talking about the Akuruno mantra. Because you could agree with me that prior before the Civil War, Southeast is one of the most rapidly developed states or region in Nigeria. So what happened? What really happened after that? Let's fast track towards to Second Republic, when Sam Mbakwe was in governance and Jinwobo in Anambra State. We presently have 5 states, then we have 2 states. Sam Mbakwe ruled for only 51 months before the military took over in 1983. During this administration, he tried very hard to curtail rural and urban migration by creating massive jobs in the rural areas. He took agriculture to a new height by emulating Chief Michael Obara. Mbakwe created now moribund Imo golden chicken poultry in Avutu. With the establishment of these flourishing farms, the Imo state not only produced enough chicken and eggs for its teeming population, but a lot of jobs were created indirectly and directly as shops sprang up across the breadth of the state. Foreign exchange was saved as the state stopped importing chicken. Mbakwe encouraged all communities in the state to build at least one secondary school and send their children to study nearby. It is laughable to understand that today that nothing is happening in the Southeast by these governors. Not minding the major, what they received, Mbakwe was able to do a massive road construction from Aba, Omuahia to Kigwe, or where, even the present day Ebonyi State. Olu, Uguta, or Hafia was not left out on Mbakwe's massive project development. Industrial development, like the transformation of Osisioma industrial area, were all Mbakwe's efforts in the suburbs. What is happening? If you look at what's also how Dubai came in being, it was an intentional approach, planning. They understood their law, they look at their laws, they amend the Sharias to accommodate foreigners because they need them to come. They understood the importance of the FDI and what it does to develop and trickle development within the region. What are we doing? Now we can see that further on, the state has been balkanized. We created more states out of the 5 states that we have. We now have 15 senatorial allottee. We have 95 local governments. We have about 43 or so, 45 House of Representative allotments in the seat. What have they done? How many of them have brought in the consular project down? Igbo individually are doing a lot, to bring Akuruno into the southeastern zone. We are doing a lot individually. But we cannot do much if the government do not come together to solve the major teething problems, the insecurity, the power, the water, the road infrastructure. If they don't put these things in place, it will be very difficult. What we are doing is, as a group, we might not really do much. Prof has been doing so much. In fact, the first time we had an interaction with Prof, he actually opened up our minds into a lot of things that SEREDEC has been doing in the Southeast. But, we cannot see those physical things that they have been doing. We can only get that from the theories, from the presentations and all that, but physically we cannot get that, So because the government is not doing enough, the 5 state governors, what are they doing? Are they coming together? By now, we should have, Oka and the Enugu should have merged by now. Lagos and Ogun has merged. Oka and Enugu, which is the smallest zones, in the whole of the Nigerians have not emerged. Anambra and Imo, no, have not emerged. But you see a massive insecurity problem. We see a massive decay. Power consumption in the Southeast is still the most expensive. You know, these things are the things that we know that must have to be tackled, must have to be looked into before the Akoruna mantra would work. The initiative is a beautiful initiative, because I know that anybody that does not want to build his own home, no Igbo man. Igbos naturally are attracted to their home. We like to go in back homes. We like to visit in our homes. But after that, we'll leave because nothing is keeping us there. Why? Why? Nothing is keeping us there. All the big businessmen that you see that have gone home to do that because they are friends with the government. People like Innocent, people like Kostaris and others, they have government backing and protection. Why can't that be extended to other Igbo people? It's difficult for us now, even now that we're planning to go for Christmas, it's difficult for us to make up our mind to go because of the insecurity. It's a problem that we know that we all need to put hand on deck. Tell these people that were elected that enough is enough. They need to change. They need to make it easier for us. They need to make it easier for people like Prof. Because Prof is doing a lot to bring us home. He's teaching us, telling us, encouraging us to come back home. You know, a lot of us have tried as much as possible to come back. Also, we meet bottlenecks. I have one of my friends that went to Enugu, he's an indigenous of Enugu. He went to Enugu, met the last previous government, discussed with them. They gave him 1,000 hectares of land to do a total new city. He came to Lagos, borrowed money from the bank, went down, started the development. And after that administration, the present administration forestalled that. They said that the contract was not evenly done. How? A young man that came from Lagos and met the previous administrations. Why? The frustration is heavy. You know? So what I think is that in as much as all these things that we're saying, we need to look inwards. We need to attack it from the root so that it can be constant. People, the diasporans wants to come home. They want to invest. Who do you trust? How do you go about that? So I think in aggregating all these things that we've said and the things said yesterday, I think what the opening speech said makes a lot of sense. You know, whereby we begin to, first of all, I appreciate the conversations because every good thing starts with the conversations. You know, so I appreciate the opportunity given to us as someone like to come in there to, you know, aid on these conversations. But I think we should also get more people involved in it, get more professionals involved in it, get more business people involved in it, you know, expand these avenues more, you know, invite us more for talks so that people could know, you know, more aware of this. Because if not for people like Prof and a few other people, we wouldn't have gotten involved or know more about this. So we need more of this. We need more of Profs. We need more of education. We need more of this symposium, this avenue, so that we can express it. But please, I need us to understand that naturally, Igbo people want to go and develop their place. But there's no enabling environment. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very, very much, Chief Ikem. Thank you so much. I think you've hit many nails on the head. We will be circling back with a few comments and questions. But the thing that strikes deepest is the fact that everybody, Ndibo Chore Lata Nolo, and we need to have these conversations and find ways to hold our politicians and governments to account. And it's by sharing ideas of how we can do this and where we've had successes that we can achieve this completely. Before I will now ask Prof. Bart Nnaji, the founder and CEO in his capacity as the founder and CEO of Aba Integrated Power Project, to say some of the issues and prospects around the Aba Integrated Project, which is an example of dealing with some of those infrastructural bottlenecks that we have. before I then open it up to the floor for general comments. Prof, please.
Yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Abani. Before I go, I must truly, truly appreciate Ikem and his group in Lagos. Really, they have exactly the mindset that we all ought to have. And the mindset of that they have in Lagos is the mindset that brought me from United States back to Nigeria. And that is that we all want to go home. We want to go and do something. We are not going to wait until the water will be running in all the taps. The roads are wonderful. There's vibrant electricity and all that. Let us come and be part of that journey. And that is what I hear from them. That's why I felt that amongst all the people who are organized within the Nigerian diaspora, which happens to be in Nigeria, that they are really quite suited for this. And they are the people who can do. They can come and build stuff in the way our people do it. So let me say that to start with, why we even began to do the Aba Integrated Power Project. I came in the early 90s to serve as Minister of Science and Technology. And while I was here, I realized that a major part of my mandate was to translate basic science to technology, to commercial products. But you can't be talking about commercial products if you can't produce the commercial products. And I realized that the major constraint was electricity. So unfortunately, our government was suddenly put to rest by my colleague, General Abacha, who was Minister of Defense when I was Minister of Science and Technology. So I went back to America, and I said that one day I would just have to come back and do something about this. Luckily, I rose in my university, in my academia. I was to reach distinguished professor rank in the United States. So I headed the United States National Science Foundation Center of Excellence. The sort of things that every academician wants to achieve. And so, but it kept niggling on my mind that, look, I am doing all these things for the people who actually step on us. And that when anyone looks at it, for example, I was representing the United States on a NATO, that is not the Atlantic Treaty Organization, research initiative. You can only imagine what it is about. And my counterparts were German professors. And we were doing all these things. And I said, look, if I continue like this, all I can be, I don't want to be an administrator. All I can be getting is just increase in my salary. And there's nothing like anything else that I can be other than be a distinguished professor. And that's really the highest you can get in academia. I said I must come back and do that thing that I had in mind. So I transferred all my program to the university and said, look, I'm going on a sabbatical. Actually, a sabbatical, then leave of absence. And then they kept my office and everything the way it was until I said to them I'm resigning. So I resigned. But when I was coming back, I did not come back that I had a job. There was no job. The only job I had was to go and do what I intended to do, which is to do something about electricity. And also, I said to myself, should I fail in my mission that I was going to become a farmer? I imagine that some of us here had the same kind of idea. Dr. Abani, who is a notable farmer out there, would understand what I'm talking about. But I felt that I could do that, but in my village. So you can imagine the mindset. So when I came home and I formed in 2000 Geometric Power, there was no private power company in Nigeria when we formed Geometric Power. And so it was like a move, which some people may think is foolish. You had NEPA, which was an authority. NEPA wasn't just a company of government, it was an authority, which meant that you cannot establish, you cannot generate and sell electricity. You cannot distribute electricity. Only NEPA had that authority to do it. That's what it is. So, but we somewhat courageously, or maybe foolishly, went after the setting up of Geometric Power. And the way it worked is that we operated as an international company and bidded for a power project in Abuja. The power project was to bring electricity to Abuja when they were doing a line from Shiroro power plants to Abuja. And they had not completed it. They estimated it would take them about 2.5 years to complete. So they needed power in the interim. And it would be a kind of a rental power, so stopgap measure. So we were bidding, and eventually our company and a company called Ekekwe, which is a Scottish firm, were giving the thing. I won't get into the details of how if we bid and we win, they will cancel because we won, but they wanted to give it to the other company. But our partners in the United States decided after cancellation of the second one, and we're going into the third one, they said, look, you will use your shirt, because what they will do is to reduce the tariff that they will pay us for the power. And they say, if you go any lower, you will lose your shirt. I said, I'm prepared to lose it. I want my foot in the door in power, so I'm going to do it. So they said, okay, they're pulling out. I said, because they were going to be the technical partner, and we were going to be the Nigerian partner in it, bringing all the other logistics. So they said, okay, they will supply equipment. We now become our own technical, commercial, bring all the funds. A very big challenge. So that last one, when we bid, I can tell you that at that point, the president, that time was Obasanjo. So went to President Obasanjo, and Obasanjo was shocked that they were doing the project that we had. So it was shared between us and that agreement. And so we got the project in Abuja. And the wonderful thing about it is that we would produce electricity and supply to the central area of Abuja. And the NEPA at the time would distribute it, but we disconnect it from the national grid. So that was a formula that was a ring-fenced approach. And it worked perfectly, because for the 2.5 years we supplied electricity there. Power was reliable. We supplied to the villa, we supplied to NNPC area, all the central area of Abuja. We supplied electricity at the time. Then the Abani industrialists, people like Ekem and Nnanna and so on, they heard about what we had done. So they came on a delegation and said, could we do the same thing for Abani? And we were also thinking in the same guise. So myself and Dr. Ngozi Owokonjo, we went to the president. We said, okay, Mr. President, we want to build this power project in Aba, because it's not just merely a power plant. But we're not going to stress the federal government by asking for sovereign guarantee, which you must have when you are building a power plant. We will not ask for it. However, give us a territory to distribute the electricity, concession it to us. So, Mr. President considered it and said, okay, we'll concession Aba as you requested to you, and then no sovereign guarantee. It's like taking your fate in your own hands. Or the article about, which I tell so often to my staff, that was it. So we got a concession. I will not, we're going to one day talk about all the journey, but I'll just kind of give a brief version of things. So we got a concession to build Aba Integrated Power Project. Why is it called integrated instead of Aba Independent Power Project? Because independent power project is typically for a single power plant that would produce electricity and sell the electricity to a distribution company. But we were to produce electricity and distribute it in a ring-fenced arrangement, the same way that we had it in Abuja, except it would have to be done in a very closed area. At that time, there was no regulator. That is, NEC, the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission, had not come into force, cannot come into existence. It was established in 2005, and then by end of 2005, 2006, it started granting licenses. So we and NEPA, PHCN, got licensed at the same time, officially. So we were the ones that we got license for generation, we got license for distribution, and we remain the only company that has license for the two. And therefore, when you have the two, you actually have a full-fledged utility. And our goal was to make Aba a complete utility unto itself, and that it could be autonomous or semi-autonomous from the national grid. We can import power, quite all right, but we have to be able to be autonomous and not depend on the national grid. So this power project in Aba came by this method. We went out to look for finance, and eventually, with the support of large support of Diamond Bank at the time, the vision of a great man of our time, Pascal, he led the effort and was able to make it possible for the other banks that supported the project to come to support the project. So we built now 141 megawatts of power, and taking the distribution infrastructure in Aba and totally cleaned it up. So that our goal is to have a first world infrastructure in electricity distribution, so that you don't have the frequent ups and downs that you have in electricity distribution. And the whole idea is, okay, you have the overloading of various transformers will go away. The network will be cleaned up and not be spaghetti looking type of network. The losses will be significantly reduced, because all the distribution companies today are just operating on nearly 45 to 55% losses, and that is unacceptable. And it is self-inflicted injury, really. So we in Aba don't want to have that kind of situation. So we have, but I don't want to get into all the travels that we've been through. And Ibajuba, Kedi, the reason I all the problems. Because now Kaiba more electricity. Because open never have more reliable electricity. Here Ikem nebu. Emebe. Yabo. Igbo. Ike ebe ọbụna ha chọbụrụ ịlụ nnukwu industry. Abịa n'ụlọ ya na-ebe na nke anyị. Na alụ ya na nke anyị, ọ bụla ya bụ na ụmụaka anyị enwe ike inweta ọrụ na be anyị. That is what it is supposed to be. Because when they are industries, so when they finish education, they go to Lagos or Port Harcourt or Abuja, or even just go and try their luck, crossing the desert or going overseas if they are so lucky. But all this can happen here. The best quality of life, I can tell you, is when you are here in your own environment and working. And you go to school, you can go elsewhere to get advanced education, etc., or you can even work a bit just to have more exposure. But in the final analysis, it is working at home. You cannot work here without having the industries. And the basic root for having industries is this fundamental infrastructure, which is electricity. So, to give you perspective about what Aba Integrated Power Project is about. The whole of Enugu Disco is allotted 500 megawatts, but they can only take less than 300 megawatts. They reject the power, actually. So less than 300 megawatts, but Geometric Power in Aba has already built 141 megawatts and has license to build, to add 47 megawatts more, to bring it to 188. So if you look at that, Aba alone will have more than half of what Enugu Disco is able to take. And that is how you achieve adequacy in electricity. And then the network has been significantly improved. Just to also give you another perspective. It cost $126 million to acquire Enugu Disco from government for the people who own it. But we've invested more than $500 million in Aba alone to power plant. We have our own gas pipeline from Shell gas processing station in Owaza to our power plant, a 27-kilometer gas pipeline we built. So we have our own. We also we have improved the distribution infrastructure, building new substations, etc., building overhead lines. The sort of overhead lines we have there. Now, but for years of storm, because of Nigerian factor, the government had sold the power, the area that concession Obasanjo gave us, sold it to another company. But finally, it has been resolved. And it is most likely that before the end of this month, that it will come back fully to us. And when it comes back to us, that is the Abani price, then we are now the one to be distributing electricity within that ring price. It's a place that spans more than 4,000 square kilometers. 9 local governments out of Abia states, 17 local governments. And it also provides electricity. We used to put 2 million people, but the Ndubuisi people used census figures and say it's over 3 million people that will be providing electricity for. And we look at that as a major beginning for our people in Igboland, because it's a place to land. You land, if you have a business, you can establish your company there. You have reliable electricity. Our hope is that the government of Abia will be able to do roads, because if you have good roads and have good electricity, the place will just take off. In fact, Anyim economic city, I don't know, Dr. Abani, are we going to have a presentation on Anyim economic city?
No, not this time around, sir.
Okay, would you grant me a few minutes to say something about that?
All right, sir.
Okay. Now, Anyim economic city is within 3 local governments of Abia State. But all the 3 local governments are circumscribed within where we supply electricity. So, the Anyim economic city is nearly a 10,000 hectare new city, industrial city, and it has license, a free zone license. And what the free zone license means is that a company can come from China and build its product here, and it is as if it is building the product in China. A company from Germany can do the same thing, from America, from anywhere. So you can have major garment industry in that place, major petrochemical products industry there. You can have leather products industry there. This is the plan. So, and the Anyim economic city is led by a very brilliant man called Daloso. Ikem, you probably know him because they own Crown Realties in Lagos. And the Crown Realties is, I understand, a 1,000 units estate in Lekki area. So he's the one leading this initiative in Abia State. It's straddled between Aba and Port Harcourt. It's covers part of Umunna local government, Okwa East and Okwa West. So when it is built, what the city provides will be all the infrastructure, electricity, water, roads, broadband. We supply electricity to that city. And it is because we're about to commence this production of electricity that they are getting financing from banks. And it's been fantastic. So I like to say that from the beginning of this year, of this coming year, we will take over supply of electricity in Aba. And within 6 months, our power plant will be fully ready. And we can say that Aba will be that first city in Nigeria, first major industrial city to have reliable electricity. Thank you very much. I know I must have taken too much time, Dr. Abani, but
Thank you very much, Prof. I think what you have have done is inspire another whole generation of people. Every time I listen, I learn something new associated with the struggle. So we've heard two very, very eloquent testimonies around Ruo Ulo, what it means, what some of the issues are that need to be addressed, but also what Professor Bart, as an example, is already doing on the ground to actually make it happen. You can also hear from the interactions, the different agencies, the political economy playouts that, as Chief Ikem said, the government does need to either play its part by doing what it should do or getting out of the way. It has to do one or the other so that we can actually make things happen. Now, I'll throw it open for any comments from the floor before I start addressing my own specific questions. If you want to say something, raise your hand or drop a chat. Charles Udo-Galanya, please. Israel, can you allow Charles to speak? And I believe he's also from Lekki, your former president. Please unmute and speak, yes. You're welcome again, sir.
Good morning, all the members of the panel.
Good morning.
Prof, I salute you. Dr. Abani, thank you. It's wonderful listening to all of you, and I'm sure that from what all of you have presented here, Prof and Ikem, Chief Ikem, I think we are coming to the end of this dark tunnel, and very soon we shall see the light. You know, for 20 years, I've been a sort of an associate with the Chinese government. And the Anyim economic city reminds me about the Chinese 5 economic zones, beginning with the flagship called Shenzhen, which a lot of people don't seem to know. Shenzhen used to be a fishing port in China, and the population is way, way low for fishermen to try. But then, when they cited Shenzhen as their flagship for the economic zone, that literally changed to what you have today as China. All the information technology companies flew down to Shenzhen, and if you visit China and you fail to visit Shenzhen, you are missing out. It is far better than Silicon Valley in California. I would like to suggest, actually I'm making a comment, that this Anyim city, there should be a key interest to drive an IT hub there. The information technology is a great industry that could favor people like us in the Igbo who have great intellectual properties. And that's what the world is talking about today. And we all know that a single app can make one a billionaire. And you don't need crowds of workers to get job done. So, Prof, I want to thank you about the Anyim city. Ike and keep pushing hard. On the other hand, let us not neglect what Chief Ikem Ume-Ezeoke said. We need our governments in the 5 southeastern states to be collaborators, to be partners in success. We need them. Just like he mentioned the frustration an investor received in Enugu State, that could serve as a huge distraction and discouragement to many others who would like to invest in our homeland. Bikono, thank God we have Soludo coming in Anambra State who is likely to listen. Let us so follow suit that Abia State, which I consider a critical state to the Igbo because of its proximity to the Atlantic Ocean, is very, very key. Imo as well will follow suit. Never mind the time it will take. Tabubo, Kaimebeniata, is going to work out soon, even in our own generation. That's all I have to say. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief Udogalina. Thank you very, very much. You've added more to what was discussed yesterday. I have just a question, and I will address it to Prof. What kept you going with all of these setbacks that would have driven many people back? Because I know the frustrations I have, which are micro compared to your own, and I still think about going back to London every day. So what's kept you focused? I think we can learn.
Yes, this is a persistent question from all kinds of sources. In 2015, after much frustration, they were able to, President Jonathan at the time when he was running, just Wednesday before the general election, he came to the plant. And they had told him that we hadn't done much. So he came and he saw that the thing had been fully built. He couldn't believe it. So in his speech, he said that I have lion heart, that any man that had built this sort of thing and people are telling him stories that he would have had a heart attack. I said in my mind, I'm not going to have a heart attack because I am not doing this for Bart and Nnaji. I'm doing this for our people. And that it's really up to our people to recognize that this is theirs and that must all work to ensure that we deliver it. So all those years, I kept thinking that maybe people say I'm a great optimist and that I think that something that can happen will happen. But, the world is built like that. All these things that are built out there, it's because people thought they can do it. If you look at the great people who have built modern technology, it's just about thinking that you can do it. And we all can do it. Once you can think it and you can put legs to it, that you can. So I kept hoping that one day a government will come to say, this is not right. And somehow it happened that the government came and said that this impunity being meted, they thought it was just bad enough. But it's really Igboland and Nigeria by extension. So I just kept that kind of hope. And I can't tell you how delighted I am today. And now that it's basically over. And I bear no grudge against anybody for all that they did to inflict this enormous pain on me and our people. But because if one carries the grudge, that's where one can die.
Indeed.
So, and I'm not going to allow myself to be in that situation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prof. The lion heart. I've now got another name I will add in my informal. Chief Ikem, please, is there any last words before I move on to the next session? I see Ambassador.
It looks
Ambassador Madibia, please, could you unmute and speak before I ask?
That beautiful lady that has her hand up, so please let her speak.
Israel, can you unmute her, please? Madam, unmute yourself.
Yes, I've unmuted.
Okay, please go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to thank Professor Nnaji for showing us all that it takes a lion heart to come home. When he came home, he said he had no job. He came, he had a vision. It needs a person with a vision to go through all he went through. And today, finally, we are all going to, in the next 6 months, enjoy what he did. I want to say that we all keep saying the problem is in our leadership. Yes, it is in our leadership. But how do we solve it? Because as Chief Ikem said, you have to have an enlightened leader who knows what he wants, who has a vision of what he expects his state or nation to be. Someone like Sheikh Maktoum did it in Dubai, Lee Kuan Yew did it in Singapore. But in the Southeast, we are talking of 5 governors from different orientations. So how do we get them to come together, to listen, and all of them have one mind to say, let us do this for the Igbo nation? Yesterday, I talked about getting young girls from the age of 18, driving for each and every one of them, every woman from 18 up who can vote, to have a voter's card. Let us extend it to boys. If we also make a concerted effort to get these people, youth, when they are so young, and say, look, the problems will be solved if we have an enlightened leadership. And it is for voters to vote in this enlightened leadership. The last speaker spoke about Soludo. I was going to say, yes, we are hoping of great things from Soludo, because we see him as someone who has been in government, as someone who knows what he wants. Let us see if Anambra under Soludo can be an example for the other Southeastern governors. But please, I keep saying, let us make a concerted effort to get our youth from 14, 18 up to get a card, to be aware that the future is in their hands. The last speaker said that it will take time. It will take time. But if we start now, going to them, saying, go and get a voter's card. Your votes matter. Vote for the right leader who will give you what you want. I think we can arrive at something. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. We are overrunning. I know we started a few minutes late, but we are overrunning. So I've seen some questions in the chat box, and John, your hands is up. I will circle back to you before we conclude today in order to be able to handle your questions, but we will need to be moving on. Chief Ikem, thank you so much. Any last words in a minute before we move on to the next session?
Yes. Just like I earlier said, first I always thank Prof for this opportunity. But like I mentioned earlier, development is an intention and is intentional. It is actually planned out and fully executed. And this, I strongly believe that we need to get the leadership involved tackle them with these conversations and get them involved, especially the 15 senators that are representing the Southeast, for the 3 House of Reps members, the local government chairman, and the governors will need to find a way to fuse them into our daily discussions, because they have the major role to play. Prof is not going to provide enough security to secure his investment and secure us. He's not going to do all the roads. He's not going to provide water for the entire Southeast. There's no drinkable water in the Southeast. The power consumption is expensive. These are the fundamentals that drive development. These are the things that we need to see on ground to encourage us to come home. Personally, I have come home. We are doing a 140 urban renewal in Imo State. We still have our bottlenecks, dealing with the communities, dealing with the government to get approvals and all that. If you don't have that mind and don't have that connection, I hope there, nothing works for you. There's a lot of young Igbo entrepreneurs everywhere that wants to come. Some have come and some have left. Like I said to you, the guy that I know that are personally close friend to me invested over 4 billion naira. A young man under 50 came home and invested that, and he was messed up by a new governor. What kind of discouragement is that? We say this in all the time, and we feel that we don't want to do much. We are interested in doing a whole lot, but we need to. And when we say that there's no timeline we can put a timeline. We can decide that in 10 years we can do it. Dubai put a timeline to what they are doing. China did that, the same thing. We can put a timeline. We have very cerebral people. We have very intelligent people. We have people that control the environment all over the world. Igbo people. We all know that. We can put a timeline to that. What we need to do is to say that within the next 5 years, these are the things that we want to achieve. And we'll bring these people on the table. Bring them on the table. Insist on them. We need, like this program we're doing now, we need to have them or have the representative in here. It is important. So I think that we need to collaborate more. We need to continue this discussion. So I really appreciate this time. I appreciate Prof. I appreciate the anchorman for this. Please, let's continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Indeed, in previous years, we've had more active government participation, but as you say, we shall continue down the road. A dream written down becomes a goal. And when a goal is broken into steps, it becomes a plan. And once you start to do that one, you get to Nnanna. That's William Buffett for us. You also gave a perfect segue into the next session. The next session is youth-led contributions to the Southeast economy. The moderator for this session is Nnanna Anyim. He's of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. A lot of you will have seen him in many different places and roles. He runs in Qatar, Umekwe, and all of these other events across the piece. And with him are going to be Dike Chukwumerije, spoken word guru, I would say. You cannot but be moved when Dike Chukwumerije puts his voice onto anything at all. And we're also going to have a presentation around the Igbo entrepreneurship as is being adopted by the Harvard Business Review, and that's led by Dr. Pascal, Umekwe, and Professor Ndubuisi Ekekwe, who doesn't know me, but I've always listened and watched him from afar on LinkedIn, not least because he was in a university that I used to be a lecturer before he became an undergraduate, FUTO. But I left FUTO in 1990. So for my own greener pastures. So Nnanna, over to you, please. Thank you. You're mute.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Okay, all right. I want to start by thanking the organizers for convening this summit and then inviting me to moderate this session. So I want to say a special thank you to the Southeast Governors Forum, SEREDEC, particularly Professor Bart Nnaji, who has become an inspiration to a lot of young men and women, not just in Igboland, but in Nigeria. And of course, a special thanks to you, Dr. Mark Abani, who I always call Uncle Mark. The earlier session that just concluded is really a timely catalyst for this next session, which will explore youth-led solutions and contributions to the Southeast economy, with some emphasis on the Igbo entrepreneurship system. As we all know, ours is a very youthful population, and the impact of our young people in the Southeast economy is very, very much evident in enterprise, in innovation, creativity, technology, agriculture, industry, and commerce. Just to give an example, the leading transport and logistics company in Nigeria is run by a young Igbo man. And there are many like him with the potentials to contribute and lead the transformation of the Southeast economy. So this 1 hour session, and we'll try and keep it to 1 hour, will focus on the realities, opportunities, and strategies for deploying and scaling up youth-led solutions and contributions to the Southeast economy. Now, to lead this discussion, like Dr. Mark Abani had said, we have 3 distinguished Igbo personalities that will set the context for this conversation. Dike Chukwumerije really requires no introduction. His words and poems reverberate across the world. He's a spoken word artist and an author, and very importantly, to an activist. We also have Dr. Pascal, Umekwe, and Professor Ndubuisi, Ekekwe, who will do a presentation on Harvard Business Review's publication on the Igbo entrepreneurship system. So without much time to spend on introductions, I will want to invite Dike Chukwumerije to start this session with his speech. Dike, over to you now, please.
Thank you very much. Please, am I audible? Okay, thank you. Before we became branded as a mercantile people, as a tribe of traders, as a culture of money bags where materialism is king, it is important that we as a people do not forget that it was the writing of a story, the publication of a novel that put us on the map. Let us not forget that Nnamdi Azikiwe had 2 master's degrees. Let us not forget that Kenneth Onwuka-Dike attended Forabe in Sierra Leone, King's College in London, and went on to become, in the days before institutionalized tribalism, the first Vice Chancellor of Nigeria's premier university, the University of Ibadan. Let us not forget the intricacy of Okibo's poetry, that we're not just a my continent on a high sea people, but our existence does not revolve around Aria or Chanja. As important as these markets are in our cultural universe, let us not forget that there is only one University of Nigeria, and it is in Nsukka. This is also the land of Pius Okibo, of Arthur Nwankwo, Elizabeth Esichi, Anya. We think, we introspect. This is the land of Israel Iweka, Igbo Obusi, builder of Iweka Road Onitsha, whose greatest legacy has turned out to be the writing of that book in 1922, the first book ever written in Igbo. Yes, as Igbo people, we came to Western education late, but we came strong. That is why in just under 15 years, Enugu went from being a scattered collection of villages by the side of a plateau in 1914 to become the administrative capital of the Southern Protectorate by 1928. Yes, it was the coal. Yes, it was the rail line, first from Port Harcourt and later up to Kano. But it was also the inflow of semi-skilled workers, of clerical workers, of teachers, of local government workers from all across Igboland, from all across the country that laid the foundation for Enugu's boom. A boom that was seen through the region as villages quickly turned to towns and the fastest rate of urbanization the country had ever seen, powered not just by palm oil, but also by the products of schools like Hope Waddell, Calabar, Government College Umuahia, CKC Onitsha, Crowder Memorial Elelenwo. This potent combination of the intellectual and the entrepreneurial, of the creative and the commercial, has always been the powerful fuel for our extraordinary growth. It is why we did not die out in the war. It is why we took the 20 pounds we're left with and turned it into everything we have today. Because we followed the opportunity, wherever it led, to Lagos, to Kano, to Maiduguri, with courage. Yes, it is the bravery of the migrants to go where the markets are. It is the resilience of the apprenticeship system to proactively mentor and build up the next generation. It is the commitment of the Igbo diaspora. It is the commitment of that diaspora to never leave anyone behind. It is the resolve of the children of the soil to never leave the motherland in destitution. These are the reasons why there are so many millionaires in the Nnewi. It is because a generation of Igbos made a conscious decision to look past the past and to follow the opportunities of their day into the future. You see, the magic of our success is not in the dialect we speak, whether we say Nodani or we say Tukurala. The magic is not in the food we eat, whether it is Joko or Fesala or Oba. The magic is not in the Ishago or the Akwete. The magic is in the fact that we believe in individualism, in the son finding his own way in life and not just riding on the wings of the father, in the daughter defining herself for herself and not just inheriting the wealth of the mother. The magic is in the fact that the geography of our homeland made natural migrants of us, and the migrant culture anywhere in the world is one of courage, hard work, and ingenuity. The magic is in the fact that we believe in multiculturalism. As a people who are often found in the midst of others, we understand the importance of speaking multiple languages, of blending in. We understand the necessity for cultural fluidity. The magic is in the fact that we do not come from a long line of kings and queens. No, we come from a long tradition of village square debates, of town hall meetings, of finding consensus through the chaotic process of hearing everybody out. This is what has brought us this far. This culture of applying oneself, that is what Atilogu means. To commit yourself to learning the art of dance to the point that when you dance with so much skill, so much flair, that you don't look as well as that you are dancing with magic. That is what has brought us this far. The culture of springing back onto one's feet quickly and venturing out again. That is what the Enugu Rangers stands for. That team of the 1970s who helped Ndibo jump back up after being knocked down by the war, venturing out there on our behalf to compete again. This is the spirit that has brought us this far, the culture of inwardly subverting cultures that seek to suppress us. That is what Ngilibo represents, to do it like Achebe, to colonize the language of the colonizers, to take whatever life throws at us and turn it into part of our creative process. To use the same force that tries to push us down, to use that same force to propel ourselves forward. This is what has carried us through. This is the indomitable spirit that has brought Ndibo this far. And I believe that as Ndibo, as we continue to tap into that spirit, to tap into that heritage, as young Igbo people, not complaining about the obstacles, but knowing that within us and within our heritage, we carry the strength and the creativity to overcome and to continue to pull the rabbit out of the hat all the time, just like Professor Nnaji is doing with this project, doing what seems impossible. I'm very, very proud of my Igbo heritage. And as a young Igbo person, I have learned that I am capable of doing the impossible because that is who we are. So this is my own contribution to this section. Let me note, I think I just had about 7 minutes, so let me stick with that.
Thank you very much, Dike. A combination of the creative and the commercial, education and entrepreneurship has powered the Igbo spirit. You also reminded us that the culture of applying oneself is at the core of the Igbo man and woman's being. And as we continue to tap into that spirit, we can surmount all challenges. We can do the impossible. Thank you very much for firing us up on this session with these words. I now invite Dr. Pascal Umekwe and Professor Ndubuisi Ekekwe for their presentation.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I hope you hear me clearly.
Can I make just one small comment before you move to that presentation? I was in Durban, South Africa, early mid-November, where there were 7 heads of states, plus President Obasanjo, who was chairman of the Intra-Africa Trade Fair. And one young man was invited to speak, give poetry to the entire audience of that group. They had almost 10,000 or 11,000 people participated in the trade fair. And when he mounted the stage, it was our very own Dike Chukwumerije. I was so proud, but I was the proudest when he started speaking, and the chill could go through the bones of everybody there, what he was saying and the way he was presenting it. I mean, this is God giving talent. This young man, appreciate you very much for what you're doing with words, how you're galvanizing our people with your words.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Indeed, Dike is a people's treasure. May I now invite Dr. Pascal Umekwe.
Yeah, once more, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Distinguished fellow panelists and all the great words that Dike uttered. I've followed him as well, and it's always great to hear him speak. So for the interest of time, I would kind of go right in. Also, Ekekwe will be he'll be getting into the presentation at some point. So again, like mentioned, my name is Pascal Umekwe. In the recent decades, we know that there's been a lot of interest in the apprenticeship system, or the Igbo apprenticeship-driven entrepreneurial model, as some would call it. And I am a business professor out here in Alaska, so it's kind of a weird time out here. And my interest in this topic goes really deep. And at the moment, I'm working on a product, with Professor Ekekwe, and he would touch on that. But one thing that really makes this interesting and brings us here today is because Professor Ndubuisi Ekekwe put together a write-up, in support of this model in the Harvard Business Review, and that has raised a lot of interest for especially many of the people in the West. So my work with Professor Ekekwe is on a separate project, and but the goal is to develop a course that puts some economic theoretical footing to this system and presents it in a manner that would command the attention and lay it out for those who want to understand the system, and also find ways of modernizing and bringing it to the current realities of our business world. So most of the thoughts I'll share on this model would be in looking at it as a tool for regional economic revitalization. I shared a couple of slides earlier. I don't know if those would be put up, or maybe I would go ahead and share those from here.
Israel, can you give him permission to share, please? Or share them.
Okay, so let me. Yeah, I don't think I have that permission yet.
Okay, let me just, Israel, please, can you share the slides? I know you got them yesterday.
Just a minute, please.
Okay. Yeah, so while that comes up, I think I'll just go ahead and, for the interest of time, just keep going through some of the material. We have ample evidence, at least at this point, in the development of the financial system and some of the fallouts of that system to say that it is not working, right? It's a failed and a failing economic system that kind of drives the world today. Economists like, Nobel laureate Joseph Stiglitz talk of the challenge that the whole concept of the efficient market hypothesis have, because we know that in many ways markets are not efficient. We know that there is a disconnect between the financial systems and the economic well-being of people. We know that huge wealth inequities exist, massive unemployment, and huge levels of economic externalities also exist. This is leading to poverty, conflict, and migrations, and all sorts of problems. Works like in inequality research are also rife. They talk about this same issue. And many people who look at it place the blame squarely, on the practices of, in many cases, international business organizations, the rent-seeking and in some cases anti-competitive practices of these organizations. And while the West may not get a full sense of what is leading to this, or some of the models that can help improve the way that the wealth created by businesses are more equitably shared, we have a model that is homegrown. We have an understanding of this issue in a manner that is, in some cases, very difficult for other entities or other people of other worldviews to understand. And the Igbo apprenticeship-driven entrepreneurial model is one of such models. It's not a perfect model by any chance, but it proffers some really important and I dare say urgent solutions to some of the issues that I just mentioned. So we know that this model is not, it doesn't exist in isolation. It comes from a worldview that is ours, a worldview that extols connectedness, inclusiveness, a networked world, a worldview that extols meritocracy, hard work, like Dike so eloquently put forward. A worldview that also extols communal participation. We know, it is, we extol participation, even in the clear understanding of concepts. So we have a model here that can only look at achievement and success to the extent that that success could be replicated, verified, or repeated. So showing others how it is done is a key part of how we understand reality within the culture. and helping others to do the same. So if you can succeed and you can show others how it is done and help them to succeed, then it shows you are a master of that particular concept. And that is the strength that the Igbo apprenticeship system really formalizes. The fact that that partnership would lead to a transfer of skills across a couple of years, the fact that it will lead to growth, expansion, communal participation in wealth creation. And one other angle of this that is not often talked about is the fact that while Western economic models talk of perfect competition as just a concept out there that every industrial organization strives to get to, here we have a model that essentially systematizes a perfectly competitive market, because you have knowledge being shared from the master oga to the young boys, as such leading to a growth in the number of suppliers in that particular market, as well as a growth in the market itself. So while other concepts or while other theories, economic theories, look at this, the idea of perfect competition as something to be strive for, but never really attain it, we have a system that has it in its very core. And we know that this is the theoretical framework that provides for the maximum benefit, the maximum welfare of society. So think of the fact that you systematically seed market share to a boy that you raise, or a participant in this project that you raise over a couple of years. That is something that the Western mind in many cases finds difficult to understand. But as you go into the model and you understand the model, you see that it is key to the problems of inequality. It is key to the problems of inequities that exist. If you cannot create a system that benefits all, then there is a problem. So the task before all of us is therefore to find a way to scale and kind of revamp this system to ensure that it provides for the skills and the capital and the tools needed for businesses to thrive. So moving on to talking about the support for a modified Igbo apprenticeship entrepreneurial model. So these are some of the factors that we should, I think Professor Bart and Nnaji and many others have touched on this. We talk of infrastructure. We know that without reliable infrastructure, the cost of doing business is in many cases unsustainable. While bigger businesses may scale this hurdle, small businesses are crushed by it. So it is really important that in looking at if we think the growth of businesses or the multiplication of small businesses is a key pathway to wealth creation, then the infrastructure and the partnerships that need to make infrastructures exist or come to be are crucial to the existence of small businesses. We talk about the regional coordination. I think someone mentioned that earlier. It is very different for a business to look at setting up in a given state of, say, 1 million or 2 million people versus a business that looks at setting up in a region that has 10 million people. The economies of scale is very different. So the impulse will be to encourage the small businesses, if the platform is set right for them, to think regionally and to have some kind of synergistic policies across states to enable those businesses to thrive. I think, again, Professor Bart Nnaji talked about financing and the support that he got from the Diamond Bank and some of the other banks. Financial de-risking is a key piece to this puzzle. I think an earlier speaker talked of the folks in the diaspora, within Nigeria and outside Nigeria, are looking for avenues, to send funds into the country, to be part of something big, something bigger than themselves, if we put it that way. But often the arrangement and the risk environment makes it difficult for that to happen. So in whatever ways, private equity financing or bank financing, could be made available or organized to feed into the businesses that need that level of financing. That in itself will really unlock, the creation of new businesses and the ability for businesses to really thrive. We talk of skill acquisition. An earlier speaker talked of what some of the key things that China did to be able to kickstart development in that huge economy today. As much as the economic zones were really key to that transformation, vocational skill acquisition was key to what China was able to do. So is there a way Igbo apprenticeship-driven entrepreneurial model will be scaled in a manner that allows for the creation of incubation hubs? So here we're not just talking about minor business schools that teach concepts of business and bookkeeping and accounting. We're talking of hubs that allow for the spirit of the IAEM system or model to be transferred. Definitely there will be some need for modern pedagogic designers and other folks. But think of a situation where a master craftsman or a notable success story within the IAEM system is able to adopt one of these schools or adopt a couple schools. And as such, ensure that knowledge transfer happens. And in return, of course, we're looking at franchises. They should have a stake in the success of each person, each graduate from that institute or from that training program. Government always has a role. So I think someone mentioned earlier that although the effort is not to be political, but we have to be aware of what's going on. So how can government ensure that our businesses are not reacting, to the changes that happen in different industrial sectors, but being part of the crafting of those agreements or the crafting of the position that the government could take in multilateral agreements to ensure that businesses are aware of some of the policy changes that government is about to implement so that they can prepare themselves by investment or de-risking or leveraging, different strategies they have in place to be able to take advantage of those changes that come. So unless that system exists, then government will be acting without proper information from the ground. And the businesses would also be making decisions with huge blind sides. We talk of security and law. One very great example that someone mentioned earlier was a situation where a very enterprising person was able to raise that huge amount of capital to invest in a project that is now running into a lot of issues. I talk here about the Delaware model. So here we have a little state in the United States that is able to attract some of the biggest multinationals across the world because of the body of law that has been created, the clarity with which commercial litigation is handled. Just that in itself allows businesses to keep flocking to that little state. So is there a way that the judicial system could be arranged or the judicial system could be made capable of handling commercial disputes to ensure that people who struggle and raise money to invest in certain businesses are not left hanging? One of the last points I would like to touch on is that of measuring our success. We've talked of some of the many things that could be done to make the region successful, to make businesses thrive. But how do we measure that success? Is it still by GDP? So while there is this huge focus on that, we remember, I think it's one of the past US presidents, I think it's Kennedy, who talked of GDP as a measure that is important, but that fails to measure the things that are almost immeasurable in our lives, the happiness, the health, and things of that nature. So we must think beyond GDP in measuring progress for the region. We must think of metrics on health, environment, education. What's the speed of business startup? What's the speed of business creation or registration? how many students are graduating from the vocational skill centers. Those are the kinds of things that we should be using, I would argue, in measuring the progress that we make as a region. And while we point to examples in the East and West and some of the good things that different nations have been able to achieve, let's remember that some of these nations are struggling because of other aspects of managing that development that have not gone too well. Look at the level of inequality in some of the major economies, in the US, in China, and in Europe, where 1% of households own a third of the wealth in the country. Family structures are weak. And the GDP that is often talked about, much of that is just spending on health issues. So it forces us then to look inward and say, as Igbos, as Africans, what are we known for? You think of strong families, you think of the culture of life, you think of care for the young and old, you think of respect for Mother Earth. So while that is often laughed at when cast in maybe the ancient way of looking at it, but that was in itself a reverence for the interconnectedness that we as a people understood that we lacked a lot of full. I would say often you make certain changes in an economy, you make certain changes in a system without understanding that the relationships are not linear. So intuitively, we understood that and we stayed off certain lanes. And that's what's happening now with the environment. You see lots of problems, and climate change and some of the spending and other projects that have been, or programs that have been generated to handle that issue. Because as most worldviews do not have that respect, that respect for a system that is really difficult to understand. But we have that. So how can our growth then reflect what we really want for the region? We talk of strong women partnership in development. I think our own Mrs. Regina Amadinjoku has developed a fantastic work that delves into this area. In looking at an economy that is life-enhancing, that is harmonious, that is inclusive, we must ensure that our full notion of society is represented, in this struggle. They say, you can't have one without the other. So it's important that in every conversation around development, in every conversation around how to make the region, stand on its feet and do what we know we are capable of doing, that the other half is included. So we've talked about security, but we know that job creation, employment, and some of these other points that we've listed are key, to ensuring that our region is secure and attracts the kinds of investments that we want the regions to attract. So with this, I'll hand it over to Professor Ekekwe and Prof, are you there?
Thank you very much, Dr. Umekwe. You have made a very, very incisive presentation this morning. You described the Igbo apprenticeship model built on 3 pillars: connectedness, egalitarian meritocracy, and communal participation. You also listed some enablers to the model: infrastructure, regional coordination, financial de-risking, skill acquisition, government support, security, and law. And you threw in a poser. Must we continue to think within the metrics of the GDP? That we must begin to think beyond GDP. And you suggested other metrics that should guide the way we measure our success. And then you pointed us towards the 4th industrial revolution. We now invite Professor Ndubuisi Ekekwe, who in May this year had this paper published in the Harvard Business Review, where he described the Igbo apprenticeship model as a Nigerian model for stakeholder capitalism. So Professor Ekekwe, you have the floor now, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It's quite a moment and certainly a great privilege to have an opportunity of coming here to have a conversation like this. There are legends here, so many of us as little boys growing up in villages and just going through the university system in Nigeria that you all inspired us. Thank you for this opportunity. I want to stand on an existing protocol, and so just because of time, I will work with just one single plot here. If you look at this plot, interestingly, I'm going back to the same GDP. And because until we have a very good alternative, GDP will remain a vehicle for us to understand our capacity to drive productivity and expand the construct of market system. So looking at this plot here, the one just at the bottom, I have looked at 2,000 years of GDP. And looking at the 2,000 years of GDP, I use United States and China because they are largely the two dominant economies of today. If you look at these two plots, you see that over many years, the GDP of China was flat. The GDP of United States was also flat. And if the GDP is flat, what that basically means is that over a generation of people were actually getting poorer. Because if you divide the GDP by the total number of people, the population, you get what they call the per capita income. That means that from one generation to the other, people were getting poorer. People were getting poorer because the few opportunities were now being shared by more people. If you go back to your secondary school or your secondary school agricultural science or biology class, you must have read about Reverend Martins. That was the man that said that food production was going in arithmetic progression while population was going in geometric population. And at the same time, they had this extrapolation of the law of diminishing returns. All of a sudden, we get into that crisis where we cannot feed ourselves. Just to make this thing very short, look at around the bottom of America, that this linear growth GDP started moving in an exponential form. So a GDP that was linear for more than 1,500 years, and now it started ramping up. This was even more quadratic. It was growing. What happened that made it possible that the GDP of the United States of America that was flat for generations now started growing up? In the Igbo nation, the question we ask ourselves, how can we have this kind of translation? How can we have this kind of redesign? That all of a sudden, that we can create an economic system that we can see ourselves living a largely flattened GDP system into one that is actually offering a greater level of opportunity. And that where takes me to what Professor Bart and Nnaji is doing and other innovators in our economy. In every society, looking at this specific part here, I called it an invention society, society of ideas. People have ideas how to provide electricity. People have ideas how to provide clean water. People have ideas how to provide good healthcare system. But at the end of the day, nothing changes because those ideas are not taken into market to provide and solve the frictions that customers have. The citizens need good light. The citizens need good water. The citizens need good healthcare system. If we do not provide those things, we are simply living an invented society. To a large extent, Nigeria, and including, I will also say, the Igbo nation, we are still within that invention society. There are so many ideas. Our young men and young women go to Aba, go to Owerri, go to Oka. They are creating so many things. They are basically telling us, I can turn this thing into something amazing. But that translation of taking that idea to now create a company or build something that people can actually go into the market to buy, we have not been very, very successful in doing that. And until we can transition from being an inventive society to an innovation society, we are not going to see that level of economic opportunity that we all expect to see in the Igbo nation. It's not a question of being smart. Some of the finest physicists, mathematicians, chemists that lived, so many of them lived during this era. this invention society era. It helped us to understand the most fundamental constructs of physics. They created compounds. They help us discover the elements. But when the pandemic came, the polio came, the malaria came, the tuberculosis came, they died because they could not create vaccines. They had the compounds, they could not make vaccines. So we have so many ideas in the Igbo nation, but I want to believe that we can transition, not just having a society of inventors to a society of innovators. And of course, transitioning from that society of inventors to society of innovators, they need to have many translations. We need to build a critical infrastructure, just like Professor Nnaji is trying to do in Aba and other innovators in our communities are trying to do. But one other thing that is also critical is to understand that we are not just building for the innovation society of wave 1, but the innovation society of wave 2, because market systems are going to be redesigned because of the applications of new domains of technology. There's what we call artificial intelligence, robotics. These things are going to come at scale. How can young Igbo people compete in that future? How can we be prepared that as Lagos continues to rise, becoming the epicenter upon which countries, communities, investors are suing Africa? Can we get something in Enugu? Can we get something in Aba? Can we get something in Owerri? You know, I started a company in Nigeria many years ago. I located it in Owerri. Just like Professor Nnaji was saying, there are just so many challenges in our region. You know, we struggle a lot. Very, very basic things. So how can we change those things so that we can prepare our young people, give them the opportunities that in the near future, as we move into the new age, the Igbo apprenticeship system, which has already worked for us just at the end of the Civil War, can give us the momentum for us to actually drive opportunity for our people. We are very brilliant people. We are extremely, very talented people. But just having talent, just being brilliant will not be enough. We need to find ways to win in the market. And I think that is what we actually have to do. So just finally, let me just make this quick point. You know, I have been working with Pascal on this Igbo apprenticeship system. I was in a meeting in Harvard Business School where they were discussing the whole construct of inequality, the whole construct of shareholder capitalism, stakeholder capitalism. I said, hey, if you go to my community, these things you are trying to actually build as a new body of knowledge, that we have a system that makes it possible that a young boy has lost his father, the mother can't take care of him. An uncle comes back to the village. He said, hey, get ready. You are following me to the market after Christmas. And the boy is now made to become a man. And he goes back, he does the same thing to another young boy. And just like that, a society that would have been broken down because of poverty will now see sparks of hope and opportunity. That we have done this thing. But there was also one point I could not make. We have pockets of billionaires in Newi, but that does not mean that Aba, to a large extent today, is rising the way we want it to rise. That does not mean that Imo State in general is rising to the way it rise. So how can we bring shared prosperity by using the Igbo apprenticeship system philosophy to now drive a new economic system to improve the efficiency on the utilization of factors of production, which we still believe that market systems work because the construct of demand and supply will not be replaced. So thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. As we continue this conversation, I would also like to see new domain of capitalism. You know, in my business, we have what we call Tequila Capital. We invest in some of these young entrepreneurs. I think this year alone, we invested at more than $7 million. We write them sometimes $50,000, $100,000. And so many of them will just go and raise money, like Samuel Eze is raising $30 million now in our past. Those are going to be extremely important. How they are not just going to be only in Lagos, how we can also do everything necessary that they have to be in Enugu, Aba, Oka, because They are going to become the empires of the future. Because over a period of time, what we see today will be taken over by the things that are coming, because technology is going to change the market system. Thank you. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Professor Ekekwe. You have called for a transition from an invention society to an innovation society, because you remind us that there will be a challenge to expand the construct of the market system. And you have asked the question, how can we create an economic system that will unlock accelerated growth in Igbo? We will take some time and discuss this further, even though we have just 15 minutes to end this session. I promised I'll keep it within 1 hour. We had asked for questions from the chat room or comments. If you do have any, please raise your hand. We will recognize you and have you make your comments or ask your questions. Do we have any? Just raise your hand and you will be unmuted to ask your question or make a comment. Otherwise, I will just go ahead and ask live. Okay, there is, okay, no, that's a question. Okay, I see a question now from Professor Onweteka. Let me try and ask the question. He said, what are the next steps? Is there any plan to start an Igbo Chamber of Commerce with all the initiators, innovators, banks, and individuals to drive the expansion and integration of these ideas? We'll leave that towards the end so that the organizers can take that. But I wanted to ask a question to Dike Chukwumerije. I don't know, Dike, if you are still here.
I'm here, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So in your speech, you spoke very glowingly about the Igbo spirit, and somewhere in that you reminded us of the famous Igbo individualism. In Dr. Umekwe's own presentation, he mentioned communal participation. So you find that for the Igbo apprenticeship model to succeed, we must have a healthy intersection between individualism and communal participation. And to my mind, the glue that binds that is trust. Francis Fukuyama, in his book on social capital, talked about trust and its role he actually also mentioned the Igbo apprenticeship scheme and Isusu. Now, in the last couple of years, there has been a crisis within the Igbo apprenticeship model based on a breakdown of trust. So you find a situation where they say that ndị oga anaghị settle ndị boy of mazo na ndị boy na-ezuhori, then ndị boy na-asị na ndị oga na-echiti ha. So that is a crisis of trust. Now, going back to the Igbo spirit that you talked about, how do you think we can reform the breakdown of trust in such a way that we sustain the Igbo apprenticeship scheme? Because if not, this crisis could lead us to, because what you find now is a couple of Ndi Oga now go to the village, and instead of taking Onye boy, they bring a girl and call her sales girl. And so over time now, if we don't begin to find a way to address that or resolve that, you may find what we are celebrating today begin to peter out. So what are your thoughts about that, especially drawing from the Igbo spirit that you talked about earlier on? Thank you very much.
I think it speaks to a crisis in value system that is breaking down, not just in Igboland, but across Nigeria, as a result of people reacting to the system, the culture that they grew up in. When you're growing up in a very dysfunctional society where anything goes, then you become a reflection of that society. So first of all, individuals create society, then society begins to create individuals, which is what is happening now, where you have a society that has been bent out of shape around negative values, is now reproducing itself in citizens. And that's also creeping into this apprenticeship system. And what you described is so correct, because that's what one is experiencing now, where people that are bringing other people as apprentices are not really even interested in the long-term development of these people. You just want to exploit, or you want to, as a source of cheap labor, which is not the spirit of the Igbo apprenticeship system. It's not about finding cheap sources of labor. It's about developing people and giving them, building their capacity long-term. So I think as in anything else, there are solutions from the individual point of view, and there are solutions from the systemic point of view. You know, and that individually is for people to really, we need a few solid or a few shining examples to inspire people, because across board, people have lost hope. They don't believe that integrity, honesty, we talk about it, but people don't really believe that these things work anymore, that they can give you a better life. Hard work, integrity, honesty. So young people don't have enough examples. There are still people, they don't have enough examples of people who don't just profess these values, but live these values and then go on to succeed. So we need more success stories, you know. So like what Professor Nnaji was describing, which is, as I was listening to it as a storyteller, I was thinking, wow, this is a fantastic story, because it's a story of perseverance. These are values that are going out of fashion in today's world, where you want to blow within a year, you want to blow within months, and if you don't, then you move on to the next thing. It's a story of faith, where you build an entire power station before you're even sure about who you're selling it to or where you're going to sell it into. You know, so these are the sorts of stories that need to be told and amplified, so that younger people can see it and know that, okay, you know what, I can persevere, I can be honest, I can be hardworking, I can take a step of faith, and I'll succeed. You know, so where all the role models that you have are people that have taken a shortcut or have done it the wrong way. You know, so those are solutions from the individual point of view. But from the systemic point of view, as a community, you know, these are things that Umunna need to be looking into. You know, so your younger brother is being sent somewhere as an apprentice. The community as a whole needs to track the progress of that young man, not just send him out as an individual. So what happened last year? Every year we're tracking your progress, knowing what's happening with you, and being able to speak with both the master and the person that is serving the master. You know, so there needs to be that communal oversight from the Umunna. If people are actively involved in their Umunna and they are following their younger brothers and cousins and things like that, which is what we do where I come from, so that we track you from year to year. We're trying to find out what's happening so that you can catch these ills early and do something about it. You know, so those are my thoughts on the issue.
Okay, thank you very much, Dike. I hear you loud and clear. We have to celebrate more stories, especially stories like Professor Bart Nnaji's, which, like you rightly said, anybody who hears it is a story of Igbo resilience. And we hope that more platforms like this will begin to bring out those kind of stories. And then Umunna also should scale up their oversight functions in making sure that they track the progress of Umunna Garamba.
No, could I butt in just a second as well on the trust?
Okay, please.
The trust and the scheme. Apprenticeship scheme. When we did, as part of the C's work, I think it was C's 3, and then sponsored by Pearl, we did some basic research of the apprenticeship scheme. We went through a lot of different places in Aba, Onitsha, met with the boys, met with the masters, met with industries that were using an extended and differentiated form of the apprenticeship model. For instance, the patent medicine, the guys who were making local medicines, bringing the boys on, teaching them, but then giving them a commission, and so building them and having regular training. It was massive what we saw that was taking place. And this same issue of trust and boy systems came up. And one of the suggestions we received at the time was, could we consider some sort of, and this is where government can facilitate some sort of insurance scheme. So when somebody signs up as a boy, very much like we do on this group life insurance, which is gaining ground, many associations are learning that it's one easy way of handling deaths within associations, some sort of insurance scheme so that there would be some money parked. Because sometimes that breakdown in trust is merely that Ibun Madudara knows of. And in fact, I had one master come to rent some property from me, and he was so desperate that I take on the boy and I take him on while he still had the money because he knew he was sick. And so I considered my normal terms and allowed the boy come in. And 6 weeks later, the master died. If he had died, then the boy would have got absolutely nothing. So sometimes this breakdown in trust has got nothing to do with actual trust, but has got other issues. So I don't know what Prof, Ekekwe, Doc, and indeed anybody else thinks about some sort of way of formalizing it with some sort of insurance scheme built into it so that there's a guarantee that if you do what you're supposed to do, you will get your startup capital at the end of the period. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abani. I don't know if Dr. Umekwe or Professor Ekekwe will want to chime in on this. Do you have any comments around this? Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I have a comment on it. I think Dr. Abani essentially took the word from my mouth because the issue of the role of insurance, I think, is really important, and also the way our people view it, right? I think is also very important because insurance is meaningless until you get to need it, right? So folks, you may think you're paying money for something that you don't use, but there comes a time when you actually need it. So it comes back to this issue of personal responsibility versus also a systemic understanding or structure that will make certain things right. So I think there is a role for the insurance market, the private insurance market, to play, whereby just like in other places in the world where people insure their businesses, we also could get into the habit of doing so. At scale, the cost of that may be really small. But if you have just a few people, insuring their businesses, then the cost of insurance may be really, really high. So that's one thing to look at. And I think Dr. Abani he hit the nail on the head there, saying that there are times when it's not an issue of trust, it's just an issue of the risk of doing business, the counterparty risks that exist when you interact with other people. Then I also think that I support the issue of traditional institutions playing a role. Right? To the extent that there is still some respect on traditional institutions, they have a big role to play to hold people accountable using the tools of praise or shame, to ensure that people do the right thing, right? And also there is a formal arrangement in legal contract law where you could look at what are the terms of the contract, what are the duties of the boy, what are the duties of the organ, what are the expectations, what is the settlement going to look like? Is that money going to be, again, it goes a little bit more complex here, but there is need to think of inflation, for example. If you agree to give someone 100,000 naira or 1 million naira 10 years ago or 5 years ago, and you give them that money, at the end of the day, what you give them is essentially meaningless in a society where, inflation erodes the value of money. So those are some of the things that could be arranged in some kind of, legal contracts, if it comes to that, to ensure that in situations where the culture and traditional institutions cannot hold folks accountable, we have a legal framework that does so. I talked of the Delaware model, the ability to have, courts that understand business, and can litigate, in situations of like the very sad example that was shared here, someone to raise 40 billion naira, put into a project, and 2-3 years down the line, a change in administration or something throws that off. So that is a very dangerous signal for every future investor into that particular sector.
Thank you very much. Okay,
sorry, can I just come back again also on this particular one? One of the other things that we found in our study was that very often the settlement wasn't a large lump sum of money. The settlement was the master giving his boys access to his credit lines. And there's a very good working example of this in Abuja. First corner shops. I'm sure almost everybody who lives in Abuja has come across a first shop. They are all over Abuja. It's a young Igbo guy, and what he does is he brings in boys and they run a branch for him. And after 4 or 5 years, they graduate. They continue to call it First Place. And he provides his credit lines and bulk buying advantages to them, and they run it, and it's almost like a franchise. So it doesn't always have to be a capital settlement. And in fact, the more powerful ones we saw, one that really struck in Aba was a man who said that he's built, everything is based on that inherent trust, that you trust your boys, and then your boys go off and they then use your credit lines. And part of the building and part of the process of training was actually to get them to understand that it was in their own interest.
I think we've lost him. Am I the only one?
Can make it systemic somehow or the other. But
okay, can.
By the way, I sent you a private message.
Okay,
because it's very interesting.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. But I also wanted to also throw in another dimension to this. Most times when we have these conversations on the Igbo apprenticeship scheme, it's almost always focused around commerce, trade, the market, that's physical markets, Alaba, Idumota, Onitsha. But the entire model speaks to business mentoring, speaks to incubation, speaks to business acceleration. And on this, I want to bring in Professor Ekekwe. We have discussed trust, and there's been some solutions around insurance, some solutions around getting Umunna more involved. But when you look at other aspects of business, especially innovation and technology, which is your space, what is the application of some of these solutions? And what do we still see this kind of challenges when you step out of the realm of commerce? Because as a model, it's supposed to drive business growth across different business units and enterprises, not just trade. So if Professor Ekekwe is there, I know you've done quite a bit in supporting technology hubs, which really is also at the heart of building apprenticeship schemes. So what was your take on this application of this within other spaces like technology and innovation? Is Professor Ekekwe still here, or am I? Can anybody else hear me?
I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you too.
Okay, probably he's not here, but Dr. Umekwe, if you can take that, if you heard me, if you can take that question, how we are able to deal with this outside of the realm of commerce, because most of the comments we've had relate to the apprenticeship scheme and the merchant class, essentially.
Yeah, so what I would say about that is, as a model, right, there were a couple components to look at. You have the knowledge, the skill transfer that happens. You have the discipline, right? Because when a boy stays with, the Oga for a period, or goes under the tutelage of a particular person for some period, you get a lot of things that get transferred. So there's a skill component. There is the discipline, right, in the business. Then there is a network and contacts that I think Dr. Abani talked about. So how would these apply to quote unquote non-commercial businesses? I could see a situation where, let's talk of the technology space, for example. You have someone who has an idea. Often the person with the idea and the person with the tool to make that idea, commercial could be even different, right? But overall, you have a system where idea generation, right, is part of it. You have folks who bring in ideas, but you have people on staff, for example, who try to help commercialize these ideas, or at least pilot these ideas. A couple months ago, I spoke with someone who's out here in California, and his job is just to help folks with ideas, to make those ideas into businesses, essentially, to make them into products, let me put it that way. And he's one of the big business shows on TV. They talk of Shark Tank and all that. He works with all those inventors. So you come up with an idea. Often many people with the ideas don't even know where to start, right? But you have some kind of an incubation hub, or a place where that idea could be nursed, and a pilot could be, tested. And once that happens, and it's seen to be a viable idea and a workable idea, then you could go into any kinds of commercialization. So I think as a model, it's important to think of it as, what really happens in the Igbo apprenticeship system, what actually happens. There is a skill transfer, there is a discipline, there is of course, the contacts and the networks, which is also very key, because you could have the first two, but without the third, it falls flat. So to the extent that the technology space can still benefit from these three different, components, and in my view, the third becomes even most important. Folks can have, skills. They could have, the discipline, and the staying power, but without the necessary, contacts, without the necessary networks, it's difficult to really get things off the ground.
Yeah, thank you. While I still have you, the question I had for you out of your own presentation now, you had listed 6 enablers: infrastructure, regional coordination, financial de-risking, skill acquisition, government support, and then security and law. It's a short list, but it's also a long list. From your own point of view, which of these enablers can you describe as the trigger enabler? If you are to propose and say, can we focus on just start with one, and then it can unlock the rest? Which one will you pick out? And can you just share some more context around whichever one that you think is the most critical that should be addressed as soon as we are done with this summit?
Thank you very much for that question. I think it's a very important one. It forces me to focus on one of them. But again, it's also good to know that many people are working in some of the other areas, right? Professor Bart and some of the work he's doing will make me not even talk of infrastructure maybe in a few months, right? We don't need to worry much about that because that will be in place. But to speak to the heart of your question, I think financial de-risking is a key piece, because many ideas run into this issue of financing. Right? How do you get it off the ground? So Bart kind of spelled out some of, the role that the banks played in making, the idea, move forward. So financial de-risking. We have a research by PricewaterhouseCoopers not long ago talked of the Nigerian diaspora, pushing upwards of $23 billion, I think in 2018, back into Nigeria. Estimating that amount will get to about $30 billion, dollars somewhere in 2021. Of course, that was a pre-pandemic estimate. But again, it tells you that a significant amount of money exists, right? Money often is not the issue, because the issue is linking, money versus where the need exists to make a business happen. So what is stopping that flow? What is stopping the Igbos in the diaspora within Nigeria and outside Nigeria from bringing that money in? While most of them understand that many businesses back home will do much better, if operationally sound and things are put in place. They know that they will be very profitable. So what is stopping that? I think is the issue of risk. So if we can find ways to essentially, de-risk investments, this would, in many cases, ensuring that folks can hold others accountable, right? Ensuring that, besides the banks, people talk about the banks, but in many other places in the world, private equity does a lot of that, right? So you have folks who come together, you have a financial manager who understands the business. You know, he links up with people who have the funds and who are trying to look for businesses that will be profitable. And just that vehicle in itself carries a lot of business. There are some businesses that are too risky for even banks to look at because of the, you know, the controls that they have from maybe the central banks and other institutions. But that private equity can help get going. So I think financial de-risking is a big, one of the most important pieces of this, because that will kind of unlock the amount of capital that is sloshing around, just looking for the right projects to go into.
Yeah, that particular conversation has really been up and about for a very long time. How do we ensure that money finds the right business? And sometimes you are tempted to believe that it may not really be all about the numbers. And there is some bit of sentiments that also go with where money goes. Possibly if we have more Igbo banks, they will be a bit more bullish in investing or de-risking businesses in Igbo. But I agree with you. It has to be financial de-risking that should be top on the agenda. And we have a question from Anthony Amade. Is it possible to integrate a system that seeks for solutions to our problems from tech hubs, tech schools, and tech enthusiasts in Igboland? He believes that the energy is most activated when there are challenges to innovative solutions, as most people who innovate are really not given the backings, and this kills their capacity build. And this really is a story that can be told by a lot of Igbo young men and women, that of not being able to receive that. So Dr. Mark Abani, can you answer this? I saw your name pop up as potentially providing an answer. Yes, it has been answered live.
No, I was doing some housekeeping in the background on the grounds that you were going to send it. But this is a very good point. It's one of the core issues around all of the tech hubs. We're all talking about it and dancing around the edges of these particular issues. A couple of years ago, we had the young lady who took the Anambra students to win the STEM program in the US. And it was clear the amount of enthusiasm that came out of that hub and the amount of additional things that have come out of that hub and its start. You are aware, like myself, of a couple of innovation hubs we have in Ebonyi State. They're nowhere near where they should be, but they are awesome when you start to see the children who attend them starting to engage to take forward. So as Dr. Pascal has been saying, one of the key issues around this is our finding some sort of way to put some money where our mouths are with respect to these young innovation and innovators as they move things forward. And that includes giving ideas. I think we should start to try and encourage some of our more successful entrepreneurs and businessmen to sponsor prizes, investment funds for some of these tech ideas. Set out a solution. Set out a question that you have that requires a hub to do it. It's a challenge I think I'm going to get up because I use a drone as part of my work on my farm to see where they have dumped my fertilizer rather than put it where they're supposed to have put it. But of course, I'm flying blind. I'm doing it in my own way. I'm sure there's a young chap who can, or a young lady who can write some sort of drone that will even allow my camera change from just a normal one to one that picks up particular spectrum in order to be able to give me better analysis. So I think the challenge should be for quite a number of our Igbo leaders, our Igbo businessmen of note, to start to put out their problems as a challenge to some of these technical hubs, along with the prize behind it for whoever gets the solution. It's definitely an idea worth pursuing. And I think, Anthony, I think that question is very, very apt. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll bring back Dike now, because this session is really about youth-led solutions. And the second part of that question speaks at the heart of the topic for this session, which is, he said most people, and I would say most young people who innovate are really not given the backings. And so it leads them to despondency. And yeah, when you look around the streets of the Southeast, there's so much of that despondency now amongst young people now. We have a couple of them on this program at this summit listening to this. What can you say to that young man or young woman who feels that he has these solutions and he or she is not receiving the right backing and is slipping gradually towards the realm of despondency? What can you say to such young people?
Nnanna, what do you want me to say? There's so much you can do to motivate in the face of impossible odds. But I was in Port Harcourt 2 nights ago for an event, a poetry event, and I got asked a similar question by a very young spoken word artist, who said to me, what keeps you going? Because I'm tired. There's not, this thing is really difficult. And what I told him was that, it's one difference between what they call developed countries or first world countries and third world countries is this culture that sort of in European cultures, a lot of children are raised to follow their passion primarily. You live for your passion. So I was telling them the story of, I had never researched it before, these explorers that came to Africa looking for rivers and mountains and stuff. So I was reading the story of David Livingstone. And I said, look, man, this guy he had a passion. He wanted to discover things. And he came here and he was wandering around for years. And, malaria was hammering him. He was attacked by a lion. He wasn't making any money from it. It was his passion. But that Africans will say that they did witchcraft for that guy from his village. Like, how can he just come and be wandering around? And, they don't, So this, we have this tendency we have to prioritize food. I need food. I need to eat food now. I need to pay my rent now. To make it your goal and your objective, it works against you. So as much as you must always take care of number one, I believe that whatever passions you have in life, that God put in your heart, that it's your responsibility to bring them to fruition. Whether society is helping you or not helping you. Somebody said earlier that, the people that invent things are people that just believe that it will work. Nobody else can see it. Nobody else has your vision. Nobody else is interested. Ultimately, it's your responsibility. You have to believe and you have to drive it through and you have to see it through. So for people in that situation, now I'm not saying, systems don't matter, government doesn't matter, no. But the question was, look, in the face of nobody is here to help me, is that an excuse for giving up on my dream, on my passion? The answer is no, it is not an excuse. You still have to get up in the morning, whether or not you have support from your friends, family, or society, you still have to get up in the morning and pursue your passion. And eventually it is a sacrifice of trailblazers like you that will open up the door for other generations that are coming behind you. So that's the best I can say to young people in that situation.
Okay, thank you for throwing it back at us. Thank you so much, Dike. I'll circle back to Dr. Umekwe. I wish we still had...
Professor Onya has his hand up.
Okay, sorry, please go ahead. Let me see.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, moderator. Now, listening to every contribution and presenters thus far, one key thing is this, and referencing the question or the comment from one of the participants. What can we do in order to support those that have this vision, this drive. Now, we know that in a climate like the United States, where somebody can graduate from a university in Louisiana and move to Seattle, Washington, where the ICT hubs are, or to places like California, why do they have to move to those places? The reason is that there is an enabling environment where such vision and drive can be harnessed. And that is what is lacking here in the Southeast. The government, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that we should ignore the government. No, there is no society that thrives without the government creating the enabling environment. We used to have technical schools back in the day that each state or each local government take their pride in, from the Boys Technical College in Aba, the GTC in Enugu, so on and so forth. Now, those areas, those institutions are no longer in existence because of the abandonment from the state government. We need to embed this on our governors, the government, in order for them to create enabling environment. For someone that has a passion, yes, he or she needs the support, and the support is what they're not getting. That's why somebody will graduate from a university in the Southeast and, quote unquote, will leave the Southeast to look for a greener pasture, either in Port Harcourt, as Dike said earlier, or Lagos. Why not in Igboland? Why not in the Southeast? So we put this upon the government of the Southeast to create an enabling environment for businesses to thrive. The Aba IPP is there today to some degree because the person that has this vision, Professor Bart Nnaji, it's necessary to make sure that, yes, this is my drive, this is my passion, I'm not going to let it die. But how many of us have that tenacity? How many of us have that determination and drive? So to some people, I ask Professor Bart Nnaji every day, where do you get your strength from? Because some people would abandon this and call it a day. But we need to impose it on our government to create an enabling environment where these potentials can be harnessed that can serve as a multiplier effect to business development and investors to be attracted to the Southeast. This is what I have for now. Before the end of this section, and when I give my vote of thanks and the summary of the two-day summit, I will say more things on this. But let me thank our presenters and speakers in this section. They have been very, very wonderful. And I look forward to more interaction soon with each and every one of us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. You have actually made a very, very solid point, which should on its own now lead into a full-blown summit thereafter. And the point you made around enabling environment. I recall a few years ago when I was reviewing some reports from the Nigerian Economic Summit, and that became a recurring recommendation about enabling environment. And I decided to undertake a task to unpack it. What do we really mean by an enabling environment? Because I came to discover that sometimes when we say these things, we think or we expect the other party to know really what we mean. So, and I want this to go back to Dr. Mark Abani, not to provide the answers here. It may well be important that one key takeaway from this will be, can we unpack the enabling environment we require in the Southeast? What does it really mean? And identify what it is really that if we can get the governments to do, then that will create that environment, just so that we don't just go to them and say, we need you to create an environment. So that means we need you to do this, do this, do this, do this. It will be a very good key takeaway from this, because without that environment, all of the things that we are saying will not be able to materialize. And so hopefully by the time we convene for another summit, we will be able to discuss further in details what that enabling environment should look like, and what we require to create that. But while we are rounding up, I have someone, John Onweteka. You have a question, please go ahead and ask your question, because you say you beg to differ. So go ahead and ask your question, please. Can someone unmute John to ask his question? Or if he can unmute himself, can he go ahead?
He's okay now.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, can you hear now?
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much. It's been a very interesting conversation we're having, and very serious. But I seem to hear a lot about government enabling environment, government enabling environment. Is it possible to think in alternative ways? We need to think in alternative ways. We talked about risking the financial part of our country. We know our environment, and we keep talking about governments providing the enabling environment. We know that the political terrain is very uncertain. The uncertainty principle operates in this particular part of the world. And if we're going to wait for government to create the enabling environment, we may as well continue to have this summit. We have had the summit with Pat Etomi many years ago, and so on and forth. I think we need to do a SWOT analysis on what next we must do. It will be possible.
It looks like we've lost. Him.
Can I help John? Because what he is saying is really very, very important, because it seems like we believe in that our governments join individually or join together will be able to deliver the goods in terms of the enabling environment. I believe that's a combination of both the private sector and the government. For example, what we are doing in electricity, we have not relied on government at all, but we do rely on government to give permits. Government would do its own, that in areas where government is more fully capable of doing, and the private sector should do their own. The way it works is things like right-of-way. If we're doing a gas pipeline, which we must do here for our people, if we want to harness the gas that's in ground in places like Anambra Basin, then the government must give right-of-way. If we're doing rail line, government would have to give right-of-way. It doesn't cost government anything. They just have to be willing. They have to be sensitive and aware. So the problem is that they are not so far yet. Actually, we began to get their ear at some point, but things collapsed once they got into the political spectrum, and they just went away. So I think that there are some things we should hope to get from government, things that don't cost money, things that can be gotten by influence and persuasion. Those are the things that come possible now. But things that where you now say, let them come together and put together money to do it, it won't happen. Not yet anyway. Maybe the next administration, it might. But I can tell you for sure that all the people that are here now will never invest a penny in joint venture. They won't. In fact, I'll be totally shocked if they think of it. So that's the thing. So we rely on government for certain things. We don't rely on them for things that we can do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. So as we begin to wind down this session, I want to bring back our speakers to just give us their closing remarks for this session. I will start with Dike, just within 2-3 minutes. Can you just share your closing remarks, and then Dr. Umekwe after that. So Dike.
Thank you very much, Nnanna. In closing, I'll just say that the greatest asset that youths, young people can bring to the table. I'm not even sure I should be calling myself youth, which is another issue these days. But the greatest asset we can bring to the table is this, that saying, we die here, that indomitable spirit, that, look, I'm going to get this thing done. I think that sort of speaks to what Onwetaka was saying earlier, that you can't keep looking around and saying the environment is not conducive, there's no support from the government. You have to take it for granted that the government is dysfunctional and there is no support. And that's where you start from. So whatever it is you're doing, you have to factor that into consideration, that the government is dysfunctional. And that for society to change, the impetus is going to have to come from the private sector, it's going to have to come from the individual, stubbornly blazing a trail somehow. Where you need the government, then you're the one that has to push the government into the corner you want it to be in, so that you can pass. And it's only when more and more of us start taking our own destinies into our own hands and shaping our environment to reflect our values, then ultimately that spirit will then catch on, and then society will take it on. But it's not going to be top down; it's going to be bottom up. So just to encourage young people out there that really it takes that lion heart that Professor Nnaji will use to go and build a power station in the middle of uncertainty. That's what it takes. That you also have to go out there and build your dream in the middle of uncertainty. It's a step of faith. And there is a 50-50 chance you may completely fail and make a fool of yourself. But on the other hand, you may not. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dike. Dr. Pascal Umekwe.
Yeah, thank you very much, Moderator. So just to wrap up, I think small business, still remains the engine for growth, the engine for shared prosperity. Big businesses are good, they are profitable, they are strong, they can weather the storms, economic cycles as they come and go. Often they aggregate a lot of, they get our attention, of course, but if you look at most economies, most societies that speak of economic growth, they look at small businesses and what can be done to get those businesses growing and what can be done to get more of those businesses started. So our people are not short of ideas. I think we've talked about that enough. Our people are not short of ideas. What our people need is, in some cases, just the listening ear, right? For some people of influence. Often you have young men and women with small business ideas, but who would not maybe have the influence to get things started. Maybe will not have the like Professor Bart talked about. Permits need to come from the government. Registration for businesses, that is something the government needs to does. So to the extent that we support small businesses, to the extent that what we do, makes small businesses more competitive in a world that is becoming more and more difficult for businesses to thrive. If we support those small businesses, then we are kind of unlocking the region for more and more economic development. And I've laid out a whole, number of points. Those are by no means exhaustive, but they are things that I believe, if looked at carefully, we can really change the tides for small businesses, and as such, change the story for our region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all our panelists, including Professor Ekekwe, who had to step out, and to our audience that has been very, very wonderful in sharing their questions. A lot of solutions have come out of this discussion, which is very, very important, because this is really meant to be a solutions-led conversation, not just discussing the problems. And I do know that the Secretariat is keeping notes, tracking down all the key outcomes from this. And I know that a report will come out that will clearly highlight what the next step should be and our pathway forward. On this note, I want to then invite Dr. Abani to take over from here. Thank you so much for this, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nnanna, for steering the ship so beautifully through the storms that are self-generated in order to get us to be better. Thank you very much, Dike Chukwumerije and Dr. Pascal, for all the thought-provoking items there. For those who were not online yesterday, I've dropped the C's overview paper that we used to start the discussion in the chat box. So you can download. It gives you a background to each of the C's from C's 1, 2016 to date, and an idea of what we were trying to do in each one. There's a lot of activity. Nnanna, watch out, we'll come and do NESG proud. On that note, I thank you.
Dr. Mark, your system is stable. You're out. Maybe Professor Mabara.
Okay, thank you very much, Omar. I think Dr. Abani, is he back on? He's having some technical difficulty. In any way, now the next section has to do with security. And this section, we will defer this section due to the inability of the speakers and the moderators to log in because of some challenges they are having. We're there. I don't know how that happened. Okay, Dr. Abani is back.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I spoke about other people's challenges and faced my own immediately.
Okay.
So we do apologize. We will make sure that we circle back for a different conversation around the security one, because it's a key one that we need to deal with. So at this point, I'll hand back to Professor Onye-Wabara to take us through the concluding processes. And once again, say personal thank you to everybody, both yesterday and today. Professor, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abani. And let me seize this opportunity to thank each and everyone that has participated, the speakers, to the moderators, to the people that joined us virtually. It has been a wonderful 2 days, and I can tell us this from the presentation Mazi Samuhabu gave yesterday to that of Honorable Minister, former Honorable Minister for Women Affairs, Josephine Anyim, to Dr. Regina Madinjok, to Ambassador Wadibia. Yesterday was loaded, and the team has repeated itself today. I can't thank our moderators enough from yesterday's people like Mr. Uchoma Ebuato. Today we have wonderful people like Nnanna and Dr. Mark Abani, who is wearing two caps as the Executive Director of CIS. And when the push comes to shove, he has to step in as a moderator. All our speakers today, Ikem Ume-Ezeoke, Professor Bart Nnaji himself, Dike Chukwumerije, Dr. Pascal Umekwe, and Professor Ndubuisi Ekekwe. All of us, all of you have been phenomenal. And I can assure us this, that the takeaway from this summit, by the time we return next year, God willing, that we will roll out the scorecard as come across 6 from inception in 2016. And this is not a talk shop per se. And SEREDEC, as an entity in partnership with the Southeast Governors Forum Secretariat, we are working hard to make sure that projects, investments are drawn to the Southeast. The SEREDEC house as a springboard to the Governors Forum. I can tell us this. Yes, we are private sector, and I keep saying this. When we talk about enabling environment, it has to be a partnership between the government and the private sector. If you're asking for a right of way for power, for gas, and if the governor of that state refuses to give it to you, there's nothing you can do. So we need to work with them, accommodate them, and let them know the need, the essence of why they're in government. And having said that, I thank each and every one of us, members of the SEREDEC Board of Directors, and all our partners thus far that have worked with us to make sure that we keep every year, keep rolling out 6. And I can't wait for 6, 7. And I would like to wish each and every one of us in closing a Merry Christmas, and let us stay safe and be cautious of COVID-19. Again, thank you for your participation, and God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Professor Anyim. Thank you, Professor Bart, the lion hat.
Thank you.
And to everybody else who has participated and over the days. I won't repeat what Professor Anyim has said. We will be sending you all who have been on this call messages, a review early in the new year of all of the outcomes and next steps as we take further steps. Many of you will be invited to join our advisory boards as well, in order to allow us actually activate and give a platform to make some of these suggestions real and live. So with that, I'll say thank you very much. We'll close down now and wish you all a very Merry Christmas. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Abani. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
It's also been live on YouTube, and I've been getting messages from people who did not log in, but have been following it on YouTube. So those links will also be made available, because I think they are absolute words of wisdom that have been elucidated over the last 2 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.